Newsfirst, face to face with Charlotte Benedict.
Hello there, very good evening. Welcome to another edition of Face to Face. Tonight we're joined by State Minister of Foreign Affairs, Tharaka Balasuriya. Very good evening, Mr. Balasuriya, and welcome to the show. After quite some time, it's very nice to have a government representative on our show because more often than not it's quite hard to get a government representative, probably because representatives of the government are so busy these days taking, well, crucial decisions that affect our country. But since, given your position of State Minister of Foreign Affairs, there are several decisions that have really impacted Sri Lanka in the recent times with regarding to Sri Lanka's relationship with foreign nations, and at this current juncture, it's extremely important that we manage our foreign relations well, given the situation that our country is in right now. Let's start with one of the most latest developments. Now, we all know that there is a brutal war waging between Israel and Palestine. The Gaza Strip is under siege, and a decision was taken by the cabinet to start a fund for children in Gaza, and $1 million to be allocated, or preparations are afoot. Do you have any idea of what discussions were behind this? Because, for the simple reason, I'm directing to you this question, because $1 million is not a small sum of money. And of course, given the fact that Sri Lanka is in an economic crisis right now, and I do understand that, of course, the situation in Gaza is much, much worse than the situation in Sri Lanka, but what were the considerations that were taken into account when this decision was reached?
I wouldn't know because I'm not in the cabinet, but I can certainly tell from the perspective of the foreign ministry. We can't live in isolation. Certainly, we are a small nation. We are a nation which is going through financial difficulties, but we still need to engage with the international community. And I think $1 million is a fairly small sum when you compare to what's happening in Gaza. And then we also have very good relations with the Middle Eastern countries. And I think the respective governments in Sri Lanka, whatever the government that has come to power, has always supported the cause of the Palestinian people. And I believe that in the future, whatever government that may come to power will also support the Palestinian cause just as much as we have done in the past. So I think I think we need to engage, and we sent some tea, which was a token gift at that time. But I'm glad that even though it's very difficult times, that we try to help the Palestinian people in whatever the small way we can.
All right. Moving on to some other issues that were cropping up in Sri Lanka recently, as far as Sri Lanka's foreign relations and all are concerned. There is a drive to boost tourism in Sri Lanka. Of course, there are certain roadblocks that are coming along the way with incidents taking place at Sri Lankan Airlines, so on and so forth. There is also the issue of many foreigners from these warring nations coming to Sri Lanka. And of course, if they can find refuge here, that's a great thing that Sri Lanka can offer to them. But as far as these several businesses that are operating, or these foreign nationals coming into Sri Lanka and operating businesses, has the foreign ministry, has this, sounded some red flags at the foreign ministry? Has this been picked up? Because there were several incidents being reported in the recent past.
The Immigrations Department comes under public security. But I mean, I can only give my opinion on that. I think the immigration laws are outdated, and I certainly think that we need to. If it's up to me, we need to amend laws so that these people can come and set up small operations in Sri Lanka. It's not necessarily a bad
and of course pay taxes.
And pay taxes. Of course, and pay taxes. I don't see it as necessarily a bad thing. People might argue saying that they are going to take the livelihood of the Sri Lankans in this area. That's not true. Just because they set up few discos or I don't know, restaurants or whatever. And you take it from this perspective. Let's say, if you are a Russian, or let's say if you are a Ukrainian or foreigner, and if you set up a shop over here, let's say a restaurant or whatever, then you're compelled to market Sri Lanka. You don't want the capital to make a loss. You want to make sure that you get money you get a good return on your investment. So I would think that in fact that we need to change our immigration laws, and I would think that we need to not only get the large scale hotels, but also we need to get small and medium hotel restaurants and villa type hotels to come to Sri Lanka, and then to a large degree the marketing for Sri Lanka will be done by these people.
Right. Moving on to a little bit of a different topic concerning the greater national politics here in Sri Lanka. One serious development today was the appointment of the Inspector General of Police. Now, I know this is out of your subject of foreign affairs, but I'm still going to pose this question to you as a representative of the people to get your opinion on this matter. Deshabandhu Thendakon was appointed as the Inspector General of Police. There was opposition to his appointment since the time he was appointed as the Acting Inspector General of Police. What are your thoughts on what happened today?
Well, I think you can't use the Constitutional Council in a way to make it dysfunctional. Okay, the government mechanism dysfunctional.
Okay.
So I believe that now, as for the Constitution, that in the Constitutional Council, you cannot abstain. You have to vote
either one way or another.
Either one way or the other. So this the whole thing took place because there was 4 people who have voted in favor of Deshabandhu Thendakon, and 2 members have voted against, and 2 members have abstained. Okay, so that itself is the breakdown in the procedure. So what I believe the speaker has done was saying that, well, since you are in a stalemate, that if this, in the event, you take into consideration that these 2 votes who have abstained have, since you can't abstain, that have voted against it, okay, then there's a tie-break vote for which the speaker has, and then he has said in that case he would cast his vote in favor of the appointment. So I think it's I don't see anything wrong with that. I'm sure it will be challenging in the courts.
Yes.
And either way, if you have you need to get 5 votes. So in that event, I think
something has to give.
Something has to give, and you can't use the Constitutional Council in order to use it as a delaying tactic. So you need to, if it's mandated that you have to vote in for or against, you can't abstain. So the 2 members, who have abstained, and then so if they cast a vote against, also the speaker will have that right to cast his vote. So by abstaining, you're trying to take away that right of the speaker to cast the final vote.
Well, you spoke about the procedure, and of course, like you said, it will be challenged in court. There is a possibility that it will be challenged in court. There are already 7 petitions that were filed before the appointment of IGP Deshabandhu Thendakon today to the position of the Inspector General of Police. Now, when we hear statements being made regarding these high appointments, and specifically to the position of the IGP, we need to take into account that Sri Lanka has had a history with IGPs who have been, several of them have been found guilty in the Supreme Court for various violations of fundamental rights. IGP Pujit Thendakon was most recently found to be in violation of the fundamental rights of the general public for not taking proper action to prevent the Easter Sunday attack. Then we had the Inspector Generals of Police in the past in Sri Lanka, I will not go on to mention names, but who were found even guilty of running hit squads.
Yeah.
That was the type of Inspector Generals of Police. So the police department has suffered in its reputation. So do you believe that this current appointment, or this new appointment that was made, would in any way assist in alleviating the reputation that the police department has among the general public? This is completely out of your subject. Completely out of your subject. I do understand. And I apologize, but I'd like to take your opinion on that.
I think, the police needs to improve its attitude. Let me put it that way. And I was talking to the DIG Kegol today. Okay, with the of course, we support the youth here, but you also need to take it from the citizen's perspective. Let's take, for example, there was some arrest made. Okay, and then I inquired as to why was this the arrest made. And then I think he had inquired from the HQI, and then they were just walking on the streets, and
so no probable cause.
No probable cause, and I mean, even if you're drunk and if you're walking on the street, it doesn't warrant anybody to come and arrest you. If you're disturbing the peace or something, then you can get arrested, and you have to have some reasonable suspicion in order for the police to arrest people. So I think, of course, we need to educate the police also particularly on the subject of the human rights and also the legality of it. How our police have operated in the past. I think we have all heard of that story of the bear and the rabbit. So the rabbit was arrested, and then after that he came out saying that he's the bear. He's the bear.
He's the bear.
Yeah. So we have. I think that kind of practice is the practice of the police. Had been the practice of the police.
But that needs to change now.
That needs to change, of course. I think we as a country has to change. Not just the police, the politicians, the civil society, the students, and the public sector, for example. So if I think we have to make sure that if we are not to repeat the mistakes of our past, we need to change.
One final question on this subject on the police, and then I promise you I will move on to something that is more in your cup of tea. One of the main oppositions that is being raised, or one of the main allegations that is being raised against this current appointment, the new appointment made to the position of IGP, is that this individual was very recently found to have violated the fundamental rights of the general public, or several individuals, and found to have been involved or responsible for the torture of these people. So when we see government representatives, MPs of the government, backbenchers speaking about these appointments and of course promoting the Yukti operation and various other drives to curb crime in Sri Lanka, of course we all concede to the fact that those are good movements. But with regard to this specific appointment to the position of IGP, from a reasonable person's perspective, if a person has been found to have been guilty of torture by the Supreme Court, nonetheless, in the country, is the government aware of this and made this decision, knowing all the facts, or has this slipped by?
Of course, I think the government is, against these allegations and the verdicts or whatever, I'm sure the government is aware of it. It's certainly not ideal, and I think you can't. I don't know whether you have, you can just completely categorize them also as a sinner or a saint. Okay, I don't think you either you get sinners or saints in police. You get people who try to enforce the law, and of course it's a difficult thing when you are enforcing the law in a country like Sri Lanka. And there can be certain violations, but what's important to note is the the constitutional framework which we need to work within, and as long as that the constitutional framework has not been violated, I think it's okay, and certainly, just as much as I think there's no ideal politician, perhaps there might not be a
ideal candidate for the Inspector General
of Police also. Yeah, so. It's a decision which the Constitutional Council
and the President,
has to make.
It's a very interesting line of thought, and I will not question you any further on those matters. Moving on into, Sri Lanka's political framework, of course.
Yeah.
Very interesting times for the general public of Sri Lanka and politicians alike, because the people have finally are going to get an opportunity to elect their representatives. Usually this is the time, naturally, where people are most active politically as well. They pay attention more, they listen more, and they try to understand as much as they can, of course. And this time, it's more imperative than all previous times, because we are at a crossroads, and the decisions that Sri Lankans make at this election will decide if Sri Lanka will prosper in at least the next decade, or if we will go further down this rabbit hole. So for starters, now, since there is a lot of blurred lines between political parties right now, where do you stand? Are you a member of the SLPP? Have you slightly inclined yourself towards another side? Are you completely independent? Where do you stand?
I stand with the people.
You stand with the people?
And no, I am a member of this SLPP.
Okay.
But I also stand with the government. And I think we need to be pragmatic. And then we need to look back, and if we have made mistakes, we need to rectify them.
Okay.
And we need to move forward. And when the SLPP was backing Gotabaya Rajapaksa for the presidency, we genuinely thought that he's the man, in the sense that he has contributed immensely for the ending of the war. He did a great job with the urban development. And of course there were unfortunate times with COVID, and but there were also bad policy decisions. So I think given our current circumstances, it's not a time we can experiment. We need someone who can steer the ship.
Okay.
And also I think this combination of the SLPP and Ranil Wickremesinghe or the UMP
is good.
I think it brings a blend. Okay. Now we tend to take this attitude that you need to have a majority, okay, in order for you to have a strong government. What has that got us? Okay, every time you have a 2/3 government, okay. Every
time the last time was back in '78.
No, I mean, 78 government is also a prime example of a government with 2/3. That the old saying that the power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely is very true. So I don't necessarily see that if you people getting together and reaching concessions on certain topics, it might be better for the country. And also, if you look at some of the most progressive laws which were passed, either usually tends to be usually at the tail end of the lifespan of the parliament, the parliamentary term. Politically, they were quite chaotic times. Okay, but everybody got together and passed some meaningful laws saying that we need to think progressively. So I certainly think that the president has given a remarkable leadership with pertaining to the economic reforms, and also I think the certain political reforms are overdue, and I certainly don't think we can experiment. So I think we need to whatever the reform agenda which the government has embarked on has to be moved forward. And if we fail,
the country fails.
If the country fails, so if we fail in terms of policy, I would think that it might take a much longer period for us to recover.
But the biggest concern among the general public is the reason for it is the drastic political or policy differences between the UNP and the SLPP. So someone has to compromise because historically, correct me if I'm wrong, but the general perspective at least of the policies of the UNP is privatization, more open market economy. And the SLPP was more nationalistic, anti-privatization, state-owned enterprise, favoring state-owned enterprises. So who has made the compromise here? Just looking at it from a third person's perspective, to me, it seems as if the SLPP has done on the compromise.
Yes, I think from the economic side of things, certainly the SLPP has made a compromise. But Churchill, started off as a conservative, and I believe he became a liberal, and then he then became the prime minister.
So anything is game now.
Churchill also said that some people change parties for their principles, and some people change their principles for the party. Okay, so
what have you done, Mr. Balasuriya?
No, I think some of these policies are outdated. Okay, let's say even when I was in when we were
campaigning for
Gotabaya Rajapaksa,
yes.
I certainly my economic views has had although you belong to a political party, it doesn't mean that you agree with
everything that they do.
Everything with the political party, but you need to work within that framework of a political party. And certainly in my case, the economic views are, I would think, more liberal than the SLPP's. I believe in the market forces.
Yes.
And also this experiment of the SOEs for the last 75 years has failed. And of course, we can say that countries like Singapore and other countries where they have succeeded. But in our case, we have failed. We have succeeded for certain periods when Anil Munasinghe was, for example, the chairman of the transport board from 70 to 77. CTB was.
So it's not the system; it's the individual.
Well, it's the system and the individual. So let's take for example the sugar, the Palwatta and all of them, they made massive profits under the former president. If you are not bringing in ethanol, of course, if you have this the policy, and then these companies will be making massive profits. But that's a protectionist policy, and then what happens is if a certain government comes to power and then change the policy, then the whole thing crashes. So you can have good management. And if the management changes, then of course the company collapses. And I myself have a very good experience pertaining to this, because before getting into politics, I was at Sri Lanka Insurance, and I joined Sri Lanka Insurance when it was reverted back to the government under Mr. Harry Jayawardena. So I worked there for about 4.5 years, 5 years under Mr. Jayawardena. And I saw how the company changed and how it became aggressive, efficient institute when compared with the older government institute. Then it was reverted back to the government by a Supreme Court decision. And you can see the company bleeding little by little. Okay, so certainly the levels of standards are not. So I worked while it was. It was under the government. I worked for about 5 years, further 5 years. So I have very good experience, and of course, during that period we did very well because we had government patronage. Okay, but getting that government patronage it's not the way to go about. You need to run your institution based on efficiency. So I think that's a lesson where we all can learn.
So we're in the final few minutes of the show. One final question. Of course, having this discussion, seeing statements made by several, members of the SLPP on stage, it seems as if there is a faction, of course, that is in favor of Ranil Wickremesinghe running for president at this election. However, there is no official announcement from the SLPP regarding who they are going to support at this presidential election. Depending on whether the SLPP puts forward a different candidate or supports Ranil Wickremesinghe, in the event that the SLPP puts forward a different candidate, where will your allegiances lie?
Well, I think, it's the Secretary General of the SLPP has made these statements, but there has been no discussions pertaining to who will be the candidate. And I have openly stated that I will support Ranil Wickremesinghe. And I believe that the vast majority of the MPs in the SLPP will support Ranil Wickremesinghe. And it doesn't make any sense for me that we brought him in as the president, and then we have made some certain progress, and now that election is going to come, we are going to abandon him and then look for a new candidate. Okay, if that's the case, if his policies are wrong, if the country, then we should move out of the government now itself, not wait for the presidential election. So I think it's the right thing to do, and I think that the electoral map in Sri Lanka will somewhat change. New alliances will come. So it's within first of all, the SLPP needs to have that internal discussion with the parliamentary group and the central committee, the executive committee, as to so all these people who comes on TV and says that we have this many candidates or whatever, it's a personal opinion, and
it's not the opinion of the party.
It's not the opinion of, certainly not the MPs.
Thank you very much, State Minister Tharaka Balasuriya, for joining us on our program today, and of course being so candid in your expression of views. Of course, we wish you the best of luck to work for Sri Lanka in your capacity as State Minister, and then hopefully fix this mess that we're in right now. Thank you very much to all our viewers out there also for tuning in to another episode of Face to Face. As I remind you always, this is a decisive election, a decisive year for Sri Lanka. We're at a crossroads, and whether or not Sri Lanka will succeed, whether or not your children will succeed, whether or not future generations in Sri Lanka will succeed, will depend on your decision at this election. Thank you very much for watching.
We will succeed. Why be so negative about it? Huh?
This is more realistic.
Realistic.
Okay. Thank you very much once again, Mr. Balasuriya. Thank you very much to our viewers out there. Take care and God bless.